A low hum vibrated through the walls of the UNS Resolute, barely audible beneath the quiet tension gripping the command deck. Commander Laura Hayes stood at the center of a wide semicircle of screens and personnel, her posture ramrod straight, eyes narrowed on the incoming data stream pulsing across the primary monitor. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a severe knot, the only visible concession to age on an otherwise unyielding face. The war had left scars, and Hayes wore them like armor. "Confirmed sighting," said Lieutenant Arjen from the sensor station. "Kilvari cruiser. No transponder. Silent approach from the outer belt of Praxis 7. Hayes turned. "Distance." 3 clicks inside restricted space. Arjen replied. No response to hails. The bridge grew quieter still. The Kilvari weren't supposed to be there. Not after the treaty. Not after 5 years of bloodshed followed by 5 more of strained silence. Hayes tapped the comm embedded in her collar. "Patch me through to command and the Kilvari assembly. Secure channel." A moment later, the screen flickered to life, splitting into 3 panels. On the left, the sharp, green-toned face of Envoy Sariak of the Kilvari assembly appeared, eyes shimmering with their species' reflective silver sheen. On the right, Admiral Kenzo of Earth's Unified Defense Council leaned forward in his seat, eyes shadowed with fatigue. Center stage was reserved for Hayes, her image projected larger to match her authority in the field. "Commander," Sariak began, tilting his elongated head, "this intrusion must be a navigational error. Our patrols have not deviated from agreed paths." "Unlikely," Hayes said flatly. "Your ship evaded 3 detection nets and entered a zone specifically marked as off-limits. That's not an error. That's a maneuver." "Perhaps your satellites are misaligned," Sariak offered with a mockery of innocence. Hayes didn't blink. "Spare me the diplomatic theater. Pull your cruiser back now, or we'll treat it as hostile." A pause. Then Sariak leaned forward, lips parting in the faintest hint of amusement. "You humans have grown bolder in peace than you ever were in war." "We're not bolder," she replied. "We're less patient." The transmission ended with a flicker of static. Kenzo's feed remained. He exhaled through his nose. "Do you want authorization for engagement?" "No," Hayes said, folding her arms. "Not yet. But I want our Black Ops satellite to refocus on that sector. If there's more than one ship out there, we need to know before they regroup." Kenzo nodded and cut the feed. Hayes turned to Arjen. "Send Recon drones. Full stealth mode. Inform Captain Callan I want his team on standby." As her officers sprang into action, Hayes moved toward her private chamber at the rear of the deck. The moment the door closed, she activated a second terminal, encrypted and unregistered. It flickered with the image of an old, unreadable symbol, a spiral set inside a broken triangle. Below it, data fragments scrolled, distorted but unmistakably Kilvari in origin, intercepted less than a week ago. The pattern didn't match any known Kilvari code. It pulsed in rhythmic intervals, structured almost like language, ancient non-native. Hayes leaned forward and keyed in a decryption command. The AI offered only partial translation. Awakening sequence initiated. Second key acquired. Phase 1 incomplete. Her fingers curled into a fist. This wasn't just Kilvari maneuvering. Something else was moving pieces in the dark. She tapped another channel. A bearded man with sharp blue eyes answered almost instantly, Captain Rhys Callan. He looked tired, his uniform half-buttoned and a data pad under his arm. "I'm activating your team," she said without preamble. "What's the objective?" "Kilvari activity, near Praxis 7. 1 cruiser confirmed, potentially more. You're to investigate without engagement unless provoked." Callan raised a brow. "You think they're planning something?" "I think they're scared," she replied. "And I want to know why." He nodded once, then signed off. Hayes stared at the darkened screen. She remembered the last days of the war. The broken transmissions, the unexpected Kilvari retreats, the unanswered questions about why the enemy had stopped advancing just as Earth's forces teetered on collapse. Everyone had celebrated the peace. But Hayes had read the patterns. Something had pulled the Kilvari back. Something they feared more than they hated humans. Now, whatever it was stirring again. Outside her chamber, Arian's voice returned over the intercom. Commander, Recon drones en route. ETA 6 minutes. Good, she said, stepping back onto the bridge. She looked at the stars beyond the viewport. They were serene and indifferent. But Hayes knew better. Peace was a story told by victors, silence a trick of distance. Conflict always waited just beyond sight. They thought the fight was over, she murmured. They were wrong. We're just getting warmed up. The drop into Praxis 7's orbital shadow was smooth, but the silence that followed was anything but comforting. Captain Rhys Callan sat forward in the pilot's chair of the Orion Shade, his gaze locked on the scanners. Around him, the Recon crew busied themselves with final checks, their movements quick, deliberate, and entirely too quiet for Callan's liking. Stealth field is stable, muttered Lieutenant Alara Voss, her dark eyes flicking over the fluctuating energy lines. We're a shadow inside a shadow. Let's hope it's enough, Callan replied, tightening the strap across his chest. Any trace of the Kilvari ship? Ghost trail, heading into the gravity well of the dwarf moon, said Corporal Vega from the rear console. Her voice was clipped, always on edge when aliens were involved. They're either hiding or they've been swallowed. Either way, Callan said, we find them. He turned his attention to the back of the room, where two figures stood apart from the human crew. The taller of the two Kilvari, Thren, kept his arms crossed and expression unreadable. The other, a younger engineer named Dale, looked uneasy, his luminous skin flushed an unusual shade of teal. This is madness, Thren said, finally breaking his silence. The treaty prohibits incursions into this zone. You defy even your own protocols. Callan didn't bother responding to the provocation. Instead, he addressed Dale directly. Can you link into their comms once we find the wreck? Dale blinked, then nodded slowly. Yes, but if the ship was destroyed, there may be nothing left to connect. We'll take that risk, Callan said. You're here because Hayes trusts you. Don't make her regret it. Dale glanced away, clearly uncomfortable. Trust was a currency still scarce between their peoples. As the ship descended, the shadow of the moon enveloped them completely. The dull gray surface stretched below, marked by jagged craters and silent ridges. Nestled between two collapsed sinkholes was the remains of the Kilvari cruiser, scarred, silent, and half-buried in regolith. Visual acquired, Voss said. Hull breach on the starboard side. No life signs. Landing sequence engaged, Callan ordered. The Orion Shade touched down with a hiss of compressed gas, and the ramp extended with a smooth mechanical groan. Callan led the team out, armored suits gleaming under the pale starlight. The air was still, oppressive in its emptiness. As they neared the cruiser, strange patterns became visible across its hull, burns and scorings unlike any weapon signature recorded in Earth or Kilvari databases. This wasn't us, Vega muttered. Or them. Callan knelt near the breach and ran a gloved hand over the scorched alloy. No, this is something else. Inside the ruined cruiser, Dale moved ahead, scanning with a palm-sized translator device. The lights flickered dimly as auxiliary power kicked in. Dead terminals blinked, cycling through fragmented data. There's a partial recording, Dale said, his voice barely above a whisper. From the bridge. A static-riddled hologram blinked into life. A Kilvari captain, eyes wild, face bloodied, spoke in a distorted voice. They came from the dark between systems. Not human. Not ours. They had consumed the relay. Breached all encryption. They knew our names. Then the image cut out. Behind them, something clattered. The team spun instantly, weapons drawn. But there was nothing. Just the echo of debris shifting deeper in the hull. Motion sensors glitching, Voss said, her voice too tight. Or something's moving. Seal the breach behind us, Callan ordered. Dale, pull every scrap of data you can. Vega, stay close to the Kilvari. Of course, she said coldly, not hiding her contempt. Back aboard the Orion Shade, they analyzed the recording in silence. The data matched nothing in any known archives. But a repeating pattern embedded in the signal caught Dale's eye. It was faint, encrypted beneath layers of distortion. "This is the glyph," he said, rotating the symbol on screen. "I've seen this once before, in forbidden archives. A precursor species, long extinct, or so we believed." Callan studied the symbol, a spiral flanked by claw-like crescents. "That's the same pattern Hayes showed me weeks ago," he murmured. "The one buried in Kilvari code." "What does it mean?" Vega asked, her eyes narrowing. "It means the war wasn't just between us and the Kilvari," Callan said. "It means someone else started it. And now they're waking up." A harsh alarm sounded. Voss turned to the console. "We've been pinged. Multiple signatures coming fast." "Kilvari?" Vega asked. Voss shook her head. "Worse. They're not using any known transponder codes." Callan stood. "Everyone to stations. We're leaving now." But as the ship lifted off, something massive moved below the surface of the moon. A low vibration trembled through the hull. Then the sensors went dark. "No signal," Voss whispered. "They're jamming us." Outside, pale light erupted from the crater, revealing massive constructs rising, silent, geometric monoliths bristling with energy. "This isn't a scouting mission anymore," Callan said, his voice grim. "This is a warning." He reached for the emergency beacon. "Send it to Hayes. Tell her the shadows weren't empty after all." The message from Captain Callan arrived fragmented, laced with static and encrypted metadata. Yet even through the distortion, the urgency was unmistakable. Commander Laura Hayes stood in the center of the strategy chamber aboard the UNS Resolute, her gaze fixed on the ghostly image of alien monoliths rising from the moon's surface. A single line had survived intact from the beacon. They were never gone. "They've been waiting." Around her, the command team watched in tense silence. No one questioned the authenticity of the footage. It felt too real, too raw to be manufactured. It wasn't just what they saw, but what they felt watching it. An ancient design, almost predatory in its symmetry, humming with dark intent. This wasn't Kilvari technology. This was older, colder, and crueler. "Scramble high-orbit defenses," Hayes said, "and reactivate Obsidian Protocol." Full authority. Admiral Kenzo's face flickered onto the main holoscreen. His brow was furrowed, his voice tight. "Laura, Obsidian was mothballed for a reason. You're talking about deploying AI-controlled weapons arrays and gravitic pulses that haven't been tested since." "I'm not asking," she cut in. "We're out of time. If Callan's right, and the Tsar are returning." Kenzo's eyes widened. "The Tsar? That's myth. Fringe science wrapped in ghost stories." "No." Hayes uploaded a scan from the glyph recovered by Dale. "It's language. Not just a symbol. It matches the fragments we pulled from the decrypted Kilvari records 5 years ago. The Kilvari weren't just retreating at the end of the war. They were running." Kenzo fell silent, the implications heavy in the pause. Hayes continued. "This isn't just an alien threat. This is the thing that stoked the flames between our species. Someone lit that fire to clear the way for themselves." The Admiral exhaled slowly. "I'll inform the Security Council. You have discretionary command." Hayes turned to her crew. "Prep the fleet for deployment. Every minute we hesitate is a minute they carve into our territory." 2 decks below, the Obsidian Array's AI core stirred from dormancy. Flooded chambers glowed as old systems rebooted. Combat drones, stealth satellites, quantum relay jammers, all tools humanity once built out of desperation and fear, now called back into relevance. Meanwhile, in the medbay of the Orion Shade, Captain Callan stirred awake. Pain lanced through his side, but he pushed himself up. Alara Voss sat beside him, a fresh bandage running from temple to jaw. "Dale and Thren are working on a shield bypass," she said. "Whatever those constructs are, they're emitting a distortion field. No comms. No navigation. We're cut off." Callan nodded, eyes clouded with calculations. "Did Vega make it back?" Voss shook her head. "She bought us time," she said, her voice sharp with guilt. "Held off one of the drones while we sealed the breach. I should have gone back for her." She knew the risk, Callan said quietly, and she made her choice. In the next chamber, Dale hovered over a fractured panel, his hands trembling as he traced glowing filaments. "It's not a jammer," he whispered. "It's a pulse, a frequency. Low, layered, constantly adapting. It's alive." Thren stood nearby, unusually quiet. "You mean the structure is sentient?" "I mean," Dale replied, "it's not just technology. It's communication. A signal waiting for a response." Callan entered behind them, pain stiffening his movements. "Can you answer it?" "I don't know," Dale said. "But I think someone already has." A silence fell. Callan's mind moved fast. "Are you saying the Kilvari ship wasn't lured, it was invited?" Dale looked up. That would explain why they didn't transmit distress. Why they were silent. They weren't intruding. They were following orders. Callan turned to Thren. "You knew." The Kilvari didn't deny it. "We suspected. But no one in the assembly would confirm it. The war was easier to explain than the truth. A shared lie to keep us safe." "And now?" Callan asked. "Now we have to survive the truth," Thren replied. Back aboard the Resolute, Hayes stood before a select group of officers and envoys, both human and Kilvari. Tension simmered between them, but the old mistrust was overrun by fresh dread. "We don't have the luxury of history anymore," Hayes told them. "This enemy isn't interested in diplomacy, borders, or ideology. It wants erasure. It wants silence. We can either face it fractured, or forge something new right here, right now." Silence. Then Sariak, now representative of the Kilvari War Council, stepped forward. "The last time we stood together was in surrender," he said. "Let this time be in resistance." Hayes nodded. "Then let's finish what they started." On the far edge of the system, in the hollow heart of the monolith, lights shimmered within the obsidian structure. The message Dale had unknowingly triggered had been received. Across thousands of miles, a dormant fleet stirred. Shapes emerged from between stars, smooth, predatory silhouettes unlike anything in human or Kilvari design. Silent, coordinated, timeless, and watching. In the bowels of the Resolute, Hayes watched the first long-range image appear on screen. No weapons raised, no demands issued. Just presence. Confidence born of inevitability. Her eyes didn't blink. Signal every fleet within reach. The cold's breaking. Fire's coming.